Hey everybody, it's Austin Ward. It's another Tuesday in Columbus, Ohio. Another very strange Tuesday in a bizarre Ohio State football year. This time really through what we can report here at Lettermen Row through no fault of Ohio State's own, Urban Meyer's own. Another report from Brett McMurphy. We're going to talk a lot more about football, and we still will here on Lettermen Live, brought to you by Byers Auto. Our good friends, and George Kaufman is not with us, but today we appreciate him sponsoring the show so we can bring this discussion to you with Reid Fragel down there, former Ohio State lineman, NFL lineman, Jeremy Birmingham, our recruiting guru in the middle, and Beanie Wells, our main tailback in our backfield over here to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about this. We can't ignore it because we've reported so much about it today. Urban Meyer, Gene Smith, Michael Drake, numerous players all speaking out, denying that there was ever any racially charged language used by Zach Smith on the practice field to Trevon Grimes, the former Ohio State, briefly Ohio State player, and now the Florida wide receiver. We don't need to spend too much time on it. There was a good Ohio State win last week that we can break down, and they've got two more opportunities to play coming up. But first, I don't know the right way to answer it, to ask this or how you might answer it, Beanie and Reid, but I'm just going to ask you generally. It seems like if there is some sort of confrontation between a player and a coach, sometimes that happens in football. It's a competitive game. Everybody universally has said that language wasn't used. I just wonder if sometimes maybe it's misconstrued, if it gets aggressive on the field. Like if you've been around situations where sometimes it's uncomfortable just between a player and a coach. I don't know if that's the right way to dive into this or what, but.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen situations like that. I mean, I've been a part of those situations where, me and the coach would draw it back and forth from face to face. But I think it's left there after that altercation. I don't ever remember a situation to where it dwindling over and there's being a story written about it because it's gotten that bad, or you're watching a guy transfer out of a program because of an argument or an altercation with the coach. I mean, this one seems to be a little bit odd. And, some of the quote-unquote facts of the story, I can't believe that they're necessarily facts.
Yeah, and Reid, that's been one of the quick things that you've been around with a lot of the members of that coaching staff in the past. I can't imagine that the people on that team would have allowed that to happen, no matter what color they might have been.
That's the biggest thing I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around this whole story is if it did happen, what was it, 2 years ago they're saying?
Last year.
Last year, when that happens, you're going to hear about it one way or another. Somebody's going to tweet about it. It's going to escape through that team of 105, however many people there is. Somehow it's going to leak out. So I don't care who it is or who was involved in the conversation. If that kind of language is used, that kind of altercation to that level is happening on the practice field, you're going to hear about it. It's going to get out there somehow. So for it to kind of go under the radar for this long is what they're saying. I don't know if I'm wrapping my mind around and believing it the way that it's told.
Yeah, and Berm, you know that Reid referenced that social media. Well, everybody in that wide receiver room, I think to a man, came out and said that it didn't happen the way that it was reported by Brett McMurphy. So from your perspective, what you saw from Austin Mack, Johnny Dixon, Paris Campbell, what this might mean as well for Ohio State as this is probably the most powerful PR message that they've sent in years that didn't happen that way.
It's also the most powerful individual position group and most tightly knit individual position group on this team. And for those guys to unilaterally come out and say, hey, this is totally inaccurate, obviously it means a lot to them because nobody in that room has spoken publicly about Zach Smith or gone to Twitter and talked about Zach Smith in the last handful of months since everything happened back in August. So to come out today and say, hey, you know what, this is where we draw the line, I think is pretty important. And correct me, and maybe you can confirm this or not, but I've heard back in the day that Urban doesn't even allow music in the locker room that has certain words.
That is true. I forgot about that.
In the song. Yep. So I don't imagine, and with coaches like obviously back we have Tony Alford and Larry Johnson. If that's happening on a football team, an assistant coach isn't going to be walking off that field, and I don't think that that's even remotely possible to have happened the way it was reported. And I think that you have to seriously question Brett McMurphy's motive, and more than that, question the people he's going to get this story. And ultimately, and I heard, Austin, you referenced it earlier, the school did a very thorough background check and an investigation into everything about Zach Smith just 2 months ago. Yeah. So if this had been anywhere on the periphery, if this was even in the ether, it would have been brought up then. And the fact that it's brought up now, to me, just seems like two people that have a grudge, and one of them is Trayvon Grimes' father, and the other is Brett McMurphy.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an interesting way to look at it. It's created a lot more controversy here. And I think it's important that we should state it up front here that by no means is this absolving Zach Smith of many of the other things that he did to merit his firing. That should have happened a long time ago. It didn't. But now he has been fired. Urban Meyer has been suspended already for his role in keeping Zach Smith on staff too long. That's all been litigated, reported, covered. I just, for the life of me, and this is coming from the journalism side, I don't see what possible benefit came out of this story, how it saw the light of day. The last thing I want to ask about it before we move on and talk solely about football is, like, you know, Beanie, what you think, could this be a bright side, a galvanizing thing, a unifying force for Ohio State? I mean, how does something like this play within the locker room?
Right. I mean, obviously, anytime you got something, you know, this large and it's a big piece of adversity, you try to rally around it. You try to, you know, band together as brothers and try to get beyond it and use it as a motivational key. And saying that, you know what, it's not only the teams that we're playing against us. We have the national media against us, and obviously we've seen teams kind of use that rallying point to kind of, you know, right the wrongs that they've had during the season. But one of the questions that I have for you too, before we move on, and you too, Berm, is, you know, what type of stain does this whole thing, ordeal, not just obviously the one story that Brett McMurphy wrote, the story that broke out at the beginning of the year, the stuff with Urban Meyer and all and so on and so forth. What type of stains does that you leave on a university?
Well, I think that's one reason why you are seeing the across-the-board response from Ohio State. They cannot, if there is no shred of evidence to support this, then they cannot let it stand on the record. So when you hear Urban Meyer say that he's considering legal action,
and saying it on the record.
And saying on the record that all these things, and it's not just him, for the president of the school to make the claims that he made, that it unequivocally didn't happen, for Gene Smith to say it, and for Urban Meyer, those people have a lot of pressure on their jobs and a lot of scrutiny. They cannot afford to slip up publicly and be lying about that, because then the entirety of that lawsuit could fall apart. They could, again, be in jeopardy to lose their job. If they want to have that removed, the stain that you're talking about, I think it's real when you talk about the way the world works in journalism. People are going to read that and never see the response. If all they care about is that Urban Meyer may have condoned this, and that supports their belief, unfortunately, that's the world that we live in now, and you might not ever get that out. But the only way that you can is if you are to have the truth on your side, for one, and then secondly, to passionately defend it through any way that you can. And if the end result of this is that Ohio State winds up, Urban Meyer winds up, Gene Smith, Trayvon Grimes, whoever, if they end up in court against Brett McMurphy and they win, okay. But that takes time, you know. That's the unfortunate reality for Ohio State. Again, assuming that everything that they're saying is correct, which I believe it is based on my knowledge of the situation over the last year. When you have that truth on your side, it still takes time to go through the court. It's not like they can go show up downtown tomorrow and get that thing resolved. I mean, that takes time. So let's just call it there. You can skip through, I don't know, 5 minutes of the YouTube stream later and just pretend like you're starting Lettermen Live right now, brought to you by Byers Auto, as we're talking about football, because Reid, those wins in Michigan State are pretty hard to come by. Ohio State wound up winning by 20, and it almost felt like people weren't satisfied, or that wasn't going to be good enough for them to move up. And you know how hard it is to go across that border and win.
Yeah, I think I saw him dropping the coaches poll or whatever it was. Which was
both polls, AP and the coaches.
Really? Yeah, so that's a little bit shocking to me. You know, I thought defensively and on special teams, more importantly, I think you saw them play the game that we knew they were capable of playing. Granted, it's against a Michigan State offense that isn't really the most spectacular, but nonetheless, it is I think some of the players we've been quoted as saying, this is a game you build confidence off of and move forward with. So I think that is exactly what Michigan State has been in the past for Ohio State. We've gone up there my senior year, use it as a pivotal point in the season to kind of use this confidence to say this is the team that we're going to be from here on out, and we're going to show it today. We're going to showcase that team today. That's exactly what you saw from East Lansing this past week, and I think that's what they're going to kind of build off moving forward in the season here.
I think there was some championship water that was toasted there once upon a time. Is that right?
Yeah, that is the story. Yeah, we did a toast before that game to kind of say this is where we put our foot down.
And this can be that, Beanie, I think, for Ohio State that, let's look at it from that big picture perspective that I've said a lot. They're 9-1. Mm-hmm. They're 2 wins away from winning the Big Ten East. Obviously, they've had to play better to beat a team like Michigan on November 24th, but I think there are signs in all 3 phases that that's starting to happen. Do you agree there?
I think there's signs, obviously, in 2 phases.
Okay, 2 phases.
I think offensively, we were able to kind of run the ball effectively. Not great, but we were effective in some of the runs that we did, and special teams-wise. I think defense, we still have a ways to go, although we did kind of hold a Michigan State offense down. But, I got to be frank when I'm assessing this. Yeah. Michigan State's offense all year long wasn't very good. Yeah. So, for us to make the strides that I believe we need to make on the defensive end to be of championship caliber, I still think we have a ways to go.
Berm, what'd you think?
I think that when you're dealing with a defense that's been as maligned as this group has been, it's hard to underestimate how important confidence is. I think that we may have started to see a turn as far as personnel in the secondary and understanding where people belong. Mm-hmm. We saw Sean Wade in that nickel role with Brendan White back there at the free safety opposite Jordan Fuller. And I started to see kind of that group understand their role a little bit. As I said last week, Michigan State was a really good matchup for Ohio State as far as scheme versus scheme, because Michigan State doesn't have a lot of that dynamic playmaker that has given Ohio State trouble in the slot. The guys and they tried to exploit it with running backs off against Pete Werner out on the sides and caught a few balls that way. But overall, I think that the offense was my biggest problem was the offense on Saturday, even though they, kind of started to get it together. I think that the weather was pretty bad. The offensive line got pretty well beat up in the first half, started to get some confidence in the second half when they decided to start running outside of the tackle box instead of trying to just run right into the middle. But again, I agree with Reid in the fact that there's a lot to build on and a lot to get positive and confident about from that game. And this week in Maryland should be a much more complete effort because you don't have to deal with 22 degrees, air temperature and that kind of stuff, and to get yourself ready to go.
Well, I was really glad that Reid was coming back in today, not only for Lettermen Live, but we're going to do a Buckeye Q and look at the offensive line because I get, Reid, probably more questions about that unit than any right now, and it's really hard for me to evaluate that. I didn't play the position, obviously.
It's the hardest position in
sports. It's notoriously difficult for anybody on the outside to break it down. Like, I think only an offensive lineman can really break down the offensive line. And so I wasn't going to ask Beanie to do it, but I wonder what you've thought about the last couple of weeks, if you saw something you liked or didn't like on Saturday in terms of improvement, where you think that unit is right now.
Well, I think you said it best. When the first half they got kind of beat up, they kind of had to take a second to wake up and realize, we should be out here, we should be punishing these guys. And you kind of saw that open up in the second half. But again, we're still seeing some kind of, day one mistakes in the run game especially that shouldn't be happening this late in the season. But the second half of that game, we're talking about building confidence moving forward. If you can carry that over into Maryland and Michigan game, I think you'll see a complete unit effort come together and produce those 200 rushing yard games that we know they're capable of doing. But like I said, there's still some, I don't know if it's so much that the players aren't buying into the offensive game plan with the zone read option, because you did still see some of that last week, which I was kind of surprised to see.
That went away in the second half.
In the second half, exactly. So if you can kind of take that second half offense and piece that together for a whole 4 quarters for Maryland and Michigan game, I think you'll see a better effort, from the offensive line perspective.
When you're watching a game as a former offensive lineman, are you just watching that group only?
Yeah.
I want to know, and I'm going to just speak for everyone out there that follows Ohio State football, that knows about the champions and that kind of stuff. Everyone who watched that game on Saturday, who read on Monday that Thayer Munford, Isaiah Prince, and Demetrius Knox were named champions for the game, are wondering how the hell that happened. So
I think that they understand some guys had to play well for them to get over 100 yards. Yeah. I think it's more important to note that Malcolm Pridgeon and Michael Jordan did not. And I think that those are legit concerns, and that's why I think the name Wyatt Davis keeps coming up. Brandon Bowen is healthy, and I don't know where you fall on that, Reid, whether these guys have played 10 games together. The chemistry is important. You want to stick with the guys that got you 9-1.
Sure.
Or if you can come in cold, Brandon Bowen has had 2 surgeries. Wyatt Davis is inexperienced, and thrive at guard, because I don't really know how difficult that is.
Yeah, I mean, first to answer your question, when I do watch the game, I watch more of the tackles. With Beanie, you probably watch the running backs. It's just kind of a natural instinct from years of watching film. You're looking at.
So in that first quarter, did you just shut your eyes? Because I watched a former walk-on defensive end just flat out embarrass both Ohio State tackles on numerous occasions.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. It took a second for them to wake up. It looked like it's like they had their head up their butt for the first 2 quarters, and it took them those 2 quarters to realize that they needed to wake up. And I don't know if that has something to do with the weather there. I don't know what it could be there. But you watch that, and you watch that compared to the second half, and there was just a different energy to the team. But to answer your question about switching up the guard there, I'm not a huge fan of switching up O-linemen. I think it's like kind of like a goalie in hockey, which I've said before. You can't just, rotate them in and out, or even quarterbacks for that matter.
Right.
I don't necessarily believe in that. I think you got to go with the hot hand, establish some chemistry among the linemen. I do like Wyatt Davis. I do like Bowen. But I don't think there's times. I think you saw Wyatt get in there for I think it was an extra tight end package. You saw him in there. I love that. I'm not a fan of throwing him in just to replace the guard.
They did that with Brandon Bowen 2 years ago. In 2016, they kept putting Brandon Bowen out there in number 84 or whatever because they needed help, because Isaiah Prince was having such a difficult time blocking anybody against Penn State and Michigan. So they threw Bowen out there for that purpose.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's coming with Wyatt Davis? Because, I mean, if we're being honest about what to expect in 2 weeks, how do you prepare for the pass rush that's coming, knowing how difficult it's been to keep Dwayne upright anytime there's been pressure?
Well, I do like the idea that they're throwing in Tate in there. I know there's kind of difference of opinions on that, but I do like the fact that they're mixing it up. You're not sure what you're going to get every time they go take the field. The whole Wyatt Davis thing in there at tight end to kind of help with chip blocks, I don't know if that's exactly needed all the time. Maybe in goal line packages, I would love it there. But I still think you can get away with the running back chip off the edge. I don't think it's necessary to bring in an extra lineman just for that purpose in the middle of the field, per se.
Okay, Berm. Reid brought it up. The Tate package is in the mix.
Which side is the Tate counter on?
They used it with great effect. If not for the errant snap from Michael Jordan, they probably would have scored both times in the red zone that they used him. So you can take your victory lap or whatever else.
Listen, all I've said all year is that, I don't think it's necessary to do, but it shows how different it is to defend an offense when you have to worry about a quarterback run option. And that is, you watched the first play that he came in the game was a 4th and 1 to Mike Weber, or a 3rd and 1 with Weber out at like the 45-yard line. And the hole that opened up.
The first play was in the red zone.
No, well, he had whatever. I had brain freeze. I was very cold.
The first play was actually successful.
I was very cold.
5-yard gain in the red zone.
But did you watch? You've seen the replays. How that opened up, and that had not done that for weeks on that play. Because if Dwayne Haskins is there, you know exactly where the ball is going. And I know that from a continuity standpoint, you don't want to take out Dwayne. And he mentioned it on Saturday after the game. It's not easy for him to do, but the reality is, if you're talking about confusing a defense, which is one thing Ohio State hasn't really been doing lately because they are kind of predictable, there's no reason not to do it if it gains you an advantage. And all year long we've said that you're not going to gain an advantage, but right now, when the weather starts to change, when defenses are tightening up in the red zone, I just don't see why you don't do it. And I want to see Dwayne out there with Tate. I want to see different stuff. I mean, there's ways to deploy them both. Tate's a shifty enough guy to be in the backfield as a pitch option for Dwayne. I mean, there's things you can do that are a little more eccentric, but I think that you saw that it changed the defense.
That would be eccentric, Beanie, to put them both back there at the same time. Like, Berm comes up with some crazy ideas on this show.
Yes, indeed. I mean,
where's the Tate counter, though?
No, that would be very interesting to see both of those guys back there. But then you got to Wonder which one of those running backs you're taking off the field.
Yeah.
You don't have to take any of them out. Take the tight end off the field. They're not doing nothing.
This is the same thing with these guys, with like guys who want unlimited carries. Oh, DeMario needs to touch it 10 times and give it to Paris Campbell 10 times.
Like, I'm saying one.
You only get 11 guys.
I'm saying for one or two plays.
football.
I'm saying for one or two plays, you've
No
caused,
offensive linemen.
you caused
all the
Take them
skill
all out.
players.
You cause some disruption, man. That's all. It's all about keep people off balance. The game, the Buckeyes are predictable. They have been for years. Even when they're a pass offense now, they're still predictable.
You
got to mix it up.
Berm needs NCAA 2018 to be made so he can go on there, so he can pit these guys in different positions on a video game.
He wouldn't even play Dwayne though. If he
Yes,
if he
I
had
would.
NCAA team.
He'd be like a 95 overall. I'm not dumb.
All right, Beanie, you mentioned the running backs. I know that I've personally been saying that I felt like Mike Weber gave Ohio State its best chance to win at running back when he's protecting the football. That was the first time on Saturday where, the week before J.K. Dobbins got his chance.
Right.
But it seems like Ohio State is now in a position where they're more willing to break free of that rotation if there's a guy who's riding a hot hand. Mike Weber had it on Saturday. I don't think Ohio State maybe wins the game as easily as they do without the way he played.
No, I mean, he was a guy that, ran with a purpose. And anytime you got a running back that is going in with a chip on their shoulder, as he's had when he's gotten an opportunity out there this year because of the limited amount of carries, I mean, you got to know that those guys are going to create plays. They're going to be hungry to kind of churn out those 3-yard gains and make them 6- and 7-yard gains. And, I thought we saw that from Mike Weber. I mean, he ran with a great forward lean. He ran with a purpose. He tried to create. And when you get some assistance from the offensive line, as we did in the second half, I think it made it that much easier. But you saw the more he got the ball, the more he got loose, the more he got going. And as a running back, you guys know how I am. I'm a fan of getting the guy in there, get into a rhythm, give him carries. And I love that we got a chance to finally see that with him.
I want both of those guys out there at the same time. I want Dobbins and Weber in the backfield together. I want to see things that aren't what we've seen. I don't know why the Buckeyes are refusing to do that.
We have a diamond personnel package with Dwayne, Tate,
why bring out Ben
JK?
Victor? Why bring out Ben Victor to run down the field? And when you know that if the pass rush is coming, you're not going to throw the ball to him, bring out a swing option out of the backfield. Do something that's keeping your best players on the field at all times.
All right, so Berm's going to run the wishbone.
I would throw to them both. I'm not even talking about running. I don't care about Beanie. I'm not bringing him cookies or nothing.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah.
What a weird Letterman Live we're rolling through right here with the swings of
You know
emotions.
what I'm talking about. You put both those guys out there together. You run. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Brought to you by Byers Auto, not brought to you by Berm and his cookies, as delicious as they may be. There is another game on Saturday. There are only 2 regular season games left. Another nooner. And interesting stat from Ohio State, Jerry Emig this week. Urban Meyer is 29-0 at Ohio State in noon games. You think that teams come out sleepy or restless. Hasn't lost a noon game. 6 of those are against Michigan. So that's an even more impressive number than I would have ever imagined. Of course, he doesn't lose very many games in general, but these games, guys, Beanie, Reid, the week before the game, everybody knows what the stakes are going to be, no matter what the records are, that when you play that rivalry game, I mean, I know that it's a 365-day a year. The countdown clock is going. They don't just pause it to say, nope, forget about that one. It's Maryland week. How do players maintain that focus and avoid looking ahead one week?
I mean, it's tough. Obviously, when you know that game is on the horizon, it's circled. But you also know that without taking care of, the task at hand, that game, yes, it's going to still have its importance, but it always means that much more when you're winning and you're going into it. And you know that game means something for the rest of the year, as this one will do if they go out and take care of business versus Maryland.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what I was saying before about building confidence moving forward up to the Michigan game. This can only be used as a stepping stone to kind of further display that confidence and put it all together for 4 quarters. And I think that's the way you'd approach this game leading into the Michigan game.
All right, so I think that when you look at the talent level and the way that this show has gone this year, that all 4 of us are going to be picking Ohio State to win. It's another double-digit spread. So you can make a score prediction if you want. Otherwise, what things do you want to see accomplished, Reid? I know you just said a 4-quarter game. Are you just going to be looking at the line again this week, or is there something else that you need to see?
I hate to say it, but yeah, I think I'll be looking at the line again. Just how rough those first 2 quarters were for the Michigan State game. I think I want to see them come out the gate hot and angry. I want to see them put together 4 quarters of running the ball like they did for the second half. Now, whether or not that involves a zone read option in the first half, it's a whole other story. But I would love to see them come out of the gate a little bit angry. I haven't really seen them play angry in a while here. So I would like to see that come out of the gates. No stunts off the edge, get free. I'd like to see them pick up all the stunts that they're going to be throwing at them, because they will be doing that. So really just going to be looking for 4 complete quarters in the O-line.
Ready for a burn prediction?
Yeah, yes indeed. Where are we going?
I mean, to me, I want to see, and it's going to maybe sound bizarre since he's on the verge of breaking every school record for a season, but I want to see Dwayne Haskins play more confidently, throw the ball a little more confidently. I watched last week, seemed to be on his back foot a lot and seemed to sort of be hurrying into some throws. Jeff Brom talked about it on the Big Ten teleconference earlier today. You get pressure in his face, he changes who he is, and I want to see him reassert himself as the sort of the gunslinger that he was earlier in the year. Ohio State will be playing against a backup quarterback on Saturday. Tyrone Pigram will be taking over at Maryland because they have another quarterback with a torn ACL that just came out. News came out today. So I want to see the defense be able to stop a quarterback that's pretty mobile, because that's what Pigram is. So to me, it's about the linebackers on defense and seeing. We see a totally different type of defense for Ohio State when Tough Borland is able to focus on being a middle linebacker that doesn't have to spy a quarterback, and one that does. And I think this weekend we'll see a quarterback that's more similar to what they'll see out of Shea Patterson in a week. And so to me, I want to see how they rotate in Baron Browning, who missed last week with an injury, and how they balance that out with Tough Borland, because I think Tough is finally getting healthy. I think the Buckeyes should win easy. It's a 50-degree day. Sunny, supposed to be a nice day on Saturday.
Always comes back to the weather with you, Berm.
It does, absolutely. I think like a 45-24 type game, 45-21. I think that the Anthony McFarland, Maryland's freshman running back, is really good. He's a guy Ohio State recruited pretty hard. Broke his ankle as a senior in high school, so he kind of fell off the recruiting radar, but ran for 200-plus yards a week ago. So I think you'll see them try to keep Ohio State off balance with the quarterback run and McFarland. And so I just want to see the Buckeyes play tough. I want to see him hit somebody in the face.
You know, I'm piggybacking off of Berm. You know, I'm a running back, but, you know, I really want to see Dwayne Haskins put up big numbers and get back to being that gunslinger that we saw in the early parts of the year. You know, he's a phenomenal talent, and when you got somebody like that back there at the quarterback position and you don't know if they're going to be around, you obviously want to get the most out of it. You want to be enamored when you get an opportunity to watch him play. So I would love to see that. I would love to see our run game get going a bit more than it was last week. But like I said, piggybacking off Berm again, I want to see the defense play good, the linebacking core. We're going against a mobile quarterback. See some of those guys, you know, track that quarterback and get some pressure on him with the defensive line. That's a group that we've kind of been missing the past couple of weeks.
I was just going to say that's what I've been, you know, watching, trying to see if Ohio State. Look, we've said it every week. They're not getting Nick Bosa back. Okay, you don't get to go back in time. So Chase Young, Jonathan Cooper, the pressure is on those two guys. They just, you know, to be quite honest, they have not been able to get that edge pressure home the way that they wanted to as frequently as they envisioned. Obviously, that's a big part of not having Bosa, but those other two guys are both 5 stars as well. They're supposed to be able to provide that. I think Draymond Jones is playing phenomenally well on the inside. He's still not 100%. Robert Landers, Haskell Garrett, some young guys coming along at defensive tackle. But last week it was a bunch of near misses, even against an offense that wasn't great. You know, no sacks. They've only had 1 sack in the last 2 weeks. That's not really Rushman standards for Larry Johnson's unit. So
Didn't Borland have a sack?
No, they didn't. That was a tackle for loss. It was a design run. But thank you for checking my.
I wasn't
checking my stats.
I was just remembering.
Caveman.
I was just remembering a tackle in the backfield by Tough Borland on the quarterback.
I wish you'd watched Buckeye IQ this morning. That would have really helped. But
well, I was driving.
At any rate, defensive line, offensive line, a couple guys that want to see the quarterback, linebackers get it done. Ohio State has a test. They're not out of the woods here yet before that big game against Michigan on November 24th, but they are in position to compete for a Big Ten title, get in that college football playoff. Lots going on around Columbus, as there always is. We tried to cover as much ground as we could in a short period of time here on Lettermen Live.
Did you give a prediction?
Brought to you by Byers Auto. I think Ohio State's going to win, and I think they're going to cover, but they'll have to watch Betting B1G to get a score prediction. That's content synergy right there. We're getting there. So thanks to Reid Fragel for coming in, hanging out with us. Beanie Wells, as always, hanging out. The former Letterman, Jeremy Birmingham, for making that great drive and not watching Buckeye IQ this morning.
Thanks to Reid for bringing up Tate.
Got you.
Where's that counter?
It's broken. So that was Letterman Live. I'm Austin Ward. Thanks for hanging out with us right here. Thanks to Byers Auto for sponsoring us and hanging out with us this year as well. enjoy the game this weekend, and we'll be right back here next week to talk about the big one, the one that really matters on November 24th. So we'll see you next time.